Okay, so imagine this. You co-found Facebook, right? One of the biggest companies ever. But you walk away in 2007. Before the IPO, before your friends become, multi-billionaires, yet somehow, fast forward to 2025, and you're still worth $500 million. And you're one of the loudest critics of the company you helped build. What is going on there? Let's try and unpack this today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, isn't it? It really challenges our usual ideas about success, about wealth, influence, all that stuff. So today, our deep dive is into Chris Hughes. He was known inside Facebook, apparently, as the Empath.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore how someone who, stepped away from just unbelievable riches, still found immense fortune, but maybe more importantly, found real purpose. What's so compelling, I think, is how he sort of redefined what money and power could even mean in this digital age we're all living in.
Exactly. And this isn't just about Chris Hughes, the person, is it? It's really about the choices he made, the values he seemed to prioritize, and what that might mean for how you, listening, define things like a fair shot or, a life well lived in a world that's constantly pushing for more, more, more. So our mission today is to really pull out the key nuggets from the sources we've looked at about his journey. We'll focus on his unique financial thinking, his kind of zigzagging career path, his habits, which seem pretty unusual, and the philosophy that sort of guided his decisions.
And we'll try to connect these threads to the bigger picture, right? Helping you understand not just what he did, but maybe why it matters for all of us, trying to grapple with, information overload and finding meaning beyond the balance sheet.
Okay, so let's start with that central puzzle, the money. Hughes was definitely an outlier. I mean, think about it. His co-founders are holding onto their stock for dear life, waiting for those billions. He sells most of his back in 2007.
Yeah, only 3 years after Facebook started. That's early.
Super early. And he completely missed the 2012 IPO. Forbes estimated back then that could have made him worth over $700 million just from the IPO.
Wow.
Yet here we are in 2025, our sources say $500 million tycoon. So this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it really makes you ask, how did he end up so wealthy by seemingly, not caring that much about maximizing every single dollar? For Hughes, it seems wealth wasn't the goal in itself. He really saw it as a means to an end, a lever maybe, for influence, for testing new ideas, and also, importantly, a responsibility to tackle inequality. Remember that nickname, the Empath?
Right, at Harvard. Translating the tech stuff into human connection.
Exactly. And that sensitivity, it seems, it really shaped his view of money. He talked about it as energy that could amplify human impact, not just cash.
And he walked the talk, didn't he? Pretty quickly. He joined Barack Obama's 2008 campaign, builds mybarackobama.com, that digital organizing platform that was pretty revolutionary at the time.
A big deal. And then later, he buys the New Republic in 2012. Pours millions into trying to modernize this, century-old magazine. Now, as our sources point out, that turned into, quote, a financial and reputational headache by 2016.
Yeah, definitely didn't make him richer in the traditional sense. Neither of those projects did.
Yeah.
But they really seem to align with his values, right?
Precisely. And his 2018 book, Fair Shot, it really lays out this philosophy clearly. He called his Facebook money a lucky break, not some personal triumph.
Interesting framing. Lucky break.
Yeah. And this belief that luck imposes responsibility, that's what led him to co-found the Economic Security Project, ESP, in 2016. And by 2025, ESP has backed some really significant pilot programs, like Stockton's Seed, the Magnolia Mothers Trust, basically giving direct cash to low-income families. For him, money is a tool. It's there to unlock human potential, not something sacred you just hoard.
And his lifestyle seems to match that, too. He's not living like a typical billionaire, is he? Our sources even mention he listed his historic estate up in the Hudson Valley for just under $10 million in 2025. That suggests more focus on maybe stability, community, not spectacle.
Seems like it.
So what's the takeaway for you from this first bet? It's a really powerful counter-narrative, I think. You don't have to be multi-billionaire to have influence. And you don't need to chase every dollar to live securely and feel like you have purpose.
Definitely. It sets the stage for his rather unconventional career path.
Yeah, let's get into that. He absolutely did not follow the Silicon Valley playbook. Instead of just, more tech startups, his career just zigzags, doesn't it? Politics, media, philanthropy.
It looks erratic from the outside, maybe.
Right. But underneath, you start to see this consistent strategy emerging. He seemed driven to build what you might call systems of influence, platforms to shape ideas, policies, lives.
That's a really good way to put it. And connecting back, that move into politics in 2008 with mybarackobama.com, It didn't make him wealthier directly, no, but it built invaluable credibility. He showed that his empath skills, that knack for connection, could fuse tech with social change. He pivoted from money to influence, basically.
Okay, and then the next move, bolder, maybe riskier, buying the New Republic in 2012, poured millions in, trying to make it digital first.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, 2016, collapse, mass resignations, very public criticism. Ouch.
Yeah, a lot of people would just retreat after something like that, wouldn't they? A public failure.
Totally. So why do it? Why invest in a struggling institution like that?
Well, it seems to raise this important question about his motivation. The sources suggest he was willing to spend his fortune experimenting, not for financial return, but because these institutions, like media outlets, hold power to shape democracy. And interestingly, after that experience, he didn't give up on systems. He just shifted focus. He doubled down on economic systems, co-founding ESP in 2016, committing over $10 million to push ideas like guaranteed income.
So it's like treating wealth as, what'd you call it, venture capital for social innovation.
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it.
He's not investing in startups hoping for a unicorn payoff. He's investing in policies hoping for systemic change.
Mm-hmm. And even his personal finances seem to reflect this. No flashy spending, like you said, but investing in heritage, stability, like that Hudson Valley place.
Right. So his whole career shows that building credibility, ideas, networks, that can be a more enduring kind of wealth than just stacking cash.
Yeah.
And it let him carve out this really unique space as a moral critic from the inside almost.
Which ties into his habits, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's pivot to that. His habits are really quite different from the typical tech founder stereotype. Zuckerberg focused on control, others on disruption at all costs. Hughes seemed to succeed by paying attention to people. His main contribution to early Facebook, the sources say, wasn't code. It was human intuition, translating that complex stuff into emotional narratives people could connect with.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is his habit of asking, what if, instead of just how fast. In Silicon Valley, the default is always accelerate, scale up, move fast. Hughes seemed to consciously slow down sometimes, question the assumptions. What if digital tools could actually reshape democracy for the better? What if guaranteed income could really tackle poverty?
Right. That allowed him to operate outside that constant pressure cooker of quarterly returns, didn't it?
Seems like it. And his lifestyle kind of matched that, valuing privacy, stability, not flaunting the wealth. He and his husband, Sean Eldridge, they're known for their advocacy work too, right? LGBTQ rights, community building.
It's not that he lacked ambition, clearly, but he measured impact differently.
Right.
By people touched by opportunity, maybe, rather than daily active users.
Yeah. And that highlights another really key habit, his willingness to embrace failure publicly. We keep coming back to the New Republic. After that whole thing blew up, he didn't hide. He admitted mistakes, sold his stake, and then crucially, redirected that energy into economic reform with ESP.
Seeing failure as an experiment, like you said, not a fatal blow.
Exactly. This whole approach, maybe call it the empathic Tycoon framework. Listening, questioning, accepting vulnerability that actually became his competitive advantage in a weird way. And that humility, maybe rooted in his middle-class North Carolina background, gave him this unusual detachment from the money itself.
That makes sense. And a final habit we should probably mention is his commitment to storytelling. You see it running through everything, from mybarackobama.com to his book Fair Shot, and even his upcoming 2025 book, Market Crafters, something about shaping the American economy over 100 years.
He gets that stories, not just spreadsheets, are what change minds.
So for you listening, the suggestion here is that success isn't just about grinding harder, cultivating things like empathy, curiosity, humility, narrative skill. Those can be just as powerful, maybe even more so.
Which brings us nicely to his core philosophy of life.
Right. Because it really runs counter to that dominant Silicon Valley creed, doesn't it? Most founders talk about genius, hustle, changing the world through sheer force of will. Hughes insists his success was often, just luck. What does that really mean?
Yeah, that perspective is crucial to understanding him, I think. In Fair Shot, he's very explicit. He calls his Facebook fortune an accident of timing.
Yeah.
Being at Harvard, being Zuckerberg's roommate, being the one who could communicate the vision.
So it's not false modesty. It's a genuine belief.
Yeah, it seems to be. It dismantles that whole myth of the purely self-made billionaire, and it shifts the focus towards systemic fairness instead. And this belief, it seems, it guided that huge decision back in 2007, walking away from Facebook. He valued freedom, alignment with his principles, more than maximizing wealth, personal integrity over financial optimization.
And that same core belief later drove him to take those really public kind of shocking stances, like that 2019 essay in the New York Times and Time, openly calling for Facebook to be broken up, arguing Mark Zuckerberg's, quote, unchecked authority was a threat to democracy.
Yeah, that was huge. You just don't see insiders speaking out like that against a co-founder, especially one still so powerful.
So what's driving that? Is it just critique or something deeper?
Well, what seems fascinating here is his underlying belief in maybe the primacy of human dignity. Money, politics, technology. They're all just tools. They're not the end goal. Human dignity is. That's why he invested so much in those guaranteed income experiments through ESP. For him, it wasn't just theory, it was pragmatic compassion, a real way to recognize people are more than just economic units.
Mm-hmm. And his decisions just consistently reflect that, don't they? Leaving the potential billions, failing publicly with the New Republic, then advocating for these really difficult, but maybe morally necessary policies.
Right. And he sees failure as a teacher, not a scar. The New Republic's collapse didn't make him disappear. It seemed to deepen his commitment to reform.
So for you listening, there's this profound paradox here, isn't there? By refusing to chase maximum wealth, he actually preserved both his fortune and his freedom. By acknowledging luck, he leaned into responsibility.
Which leads us to thinking about power and influence differently.
Yeah, because Hughes isn't the richest Facebook co-founder. He's not the most famous. But that very distance, that separation, it gave him a unique kind of power, didn't it? The power to speak against the empire he helped build. He carved out influence through critique, through ideas, through the courage to challenge things.
That 2019 essay calling for the breakup, it was seismic. Coming from an insider, it wasn't just a stunt, it felt like a logical extension of his whole philosophy. Power without accountability corrodes society. And it really shows that influence isn't just about how much money you have, it's about being willing to risk what you have for a principle.
Yeah.
His credibility, especially among big tech critics, just shot up after that.
And this willingness to confront concentrated power, it goes beyond tech, right?
Yeah.
His view of society overall. Inequality isn't just financial for him, it's a structural power imbalance. Through ESP, through guaranteed income, he's arguing economic power shouldn't be monopolized by just a few.
Yeah, he frames money as inherently political. And redistribution isn't just charity. It's a way to rebalance power.
By 2025, that advocacy has really hit a nerve, hasn't it? Those pilot programs influenced national debates. The pandemic made cash transfers seem less radical. AI is fueling calls for systemic solutions.
Exactly. His influence comes from framing money as a public tool, not just a private prize. He managed to be both an insider and a dissenter. It embodies what you might call the dissenter's advantage, right? Having enough resources to be secure, but enough distance to be truly honest.
Even his personal life, with Sean Eldridge, their LGBTQ advocacy, that challenges traditional power structures too in its own way. So for you, the lesson seems pretty stark. True influence isn't just measured by dominance. It's about the ability to reshape narratives and fight for balance.
And that requires resilience, especially when facing crises.
Yeah, let's talk about that. His life is definitely marked by crisis and recalibration. What sets him apart is how he uses those moments as springboards, right, for long-term strategy, demonstrating some real resilience.
The most obvious crisis was the New Republic imploding in 2016. A professional disaster, a reputational hit, big time. Yet his response was key. He acknowledged mistakes, like we said. He didn't retreat. Instead, he co-founded ESP. Redirected his influence from journalism to economic policy. That collapse became an inflection point, not an end point.
And maybe that grounding from his middle-class upbringing, feeling like an outsider at Harvard, maybe that helped, preventing that invincibility myth that gets so many tech founders.
Quite possibly, that humility could have acted as a stabilizer.
And then the public call to break up Facebook in 2019, another test, right? Huge reputational gamble, drew tons of backlash.
For sure. But his willingness to endure that storm, to stand his ground, that gave him credibility in the long run. By 2025, with everyone so much more concerned about big tech's power, that 2019 essay looks, well, pretty prophetic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
So the crisis of potentially alienating powerful allies actually turned into a long-term advantage. Maybe call it the resilience dividend. Crises, if you handle them with honesty, can pay off in wisdom and new directions.
And his upcoming 2025 book, Market Crafters, placing current debates in this century-long context.
Oh.
That signals he's playing the long game, right?
Right.
Shaping the intellectual foundations for future debates. Even listing his estate isn't necessarily about cashing out. It could just be rebalancing for whatever comes next.
Exactly.
So for you listening, it really shows that lasting influence often comes from that resilience, from learning and adapting, not from pretending to be perfect.
So let's try and pull this all together. What does it all mean?
Chris Hughes' story, it really is a profound paradox, isn't it? He could have been a billionaire many, many times over, but he chose to redefine what wealth, power, success actually meant to him. He walked away from Facebook's rocket ship, invested in a struggling magazine, publicly challenged his former friend. Looks like missteps on paper, maybe. But through his philosophy, you see this consistent pattern. Principle over profit, substance over status, long-term influence over short-term gain.
Yeah, and we've seen maybe 3 core lessons really emerge from looking at his journey. First, that money often comes down to luck. But applying it to create opportunity for others, that's where the meaning really lies.
Right.
Second, that power demands accountability. And having the courage to actually confront concentrated power can matter more than just holding power yourself. And third, that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's often the soil where long-term success grows. It's a catalyst for reinvention.
And I think that final lesson is really about identity. He never tried to be just the coder or the monopolist or the next big thing in tech. He was the empath, connecting tech to humanity, wealth to fairness, power to accountability. And by staying true to that role, he built this legacy that's completely distinct from his peers, proving that empathy can actually be a strategy, humility can be a power, and conscience. Well, conscience can be a form of capital.
His story really does ask us to reconsider our own values, doesn't it? It's easy to look at the $500 million net worth and be impressed, sure, but maybe his moral authority, the impact he's having by 2025, maybe that's truly priceless. He stands as a really inspiring, kind of refreshing example of purpose-driven influence.
And now we really want to turn this back to you listening. Chris Hughes walked away from potential billions, knowing that staying might lock him into a system he didn't believe in anymore. So if you were faced with a choice like that, maximizing your personal gain versus staying true to a core principle, which path would you choose? What would your definition of wealth be? Is it just the number in your bank account, or is it measured by the impact of your decisions? Something to take a deep dive into for yourself.